G'day everyone, my name is David and this is a short video tutorial that's going to be covering question 1 of workshop 1 for data analysis. Just to introduce myself, my name is David. I want it to be known 100% that I am not affiliated with this unit. So I'm not a tutor, I'm not a tutor, sorry. I'm not a lecturer, I'm not a unit admin, I'm not a marker or anything like that. So as such, I don't want you to think that the solutions that are being provided in these video tutorials are representative of an official solution from data analysis or PivotTable. These should be viewed in the context of that. I used to be part of the unit, so I have a very solid knowledge of exactly not only the mechanics of the statistics that is covered, but the manner in which you're required in order to gain full marks, working and everything like that. So just wanted you guys to know that off the bat. Okay, so jumping into this. In question 1, we're basically approaching a very, very common theme that you're going to see within statistics, and that is we have a large set of data. Obviously it doesn't look that large, but largish for argument's sake, and what we want to do is we want to try and gain an understanding of the data. So that's essentially one of the main components about stats, is taking a huge volume of data and then being able to compress it, or somewhat compress it, under certain statistical guidelines so that we don't lose information. So that whilst we then have a smaller representation of the data, i.e. we're not looking at every point, we can gain some valuable insights into the data. So the key thing that they want us to have a look at here is having a look at this data here. If we employ something like a frequency distribution, and I'm sorry that they keep doing that, or a histogram is what they want to do here, then what we will be able to do is take this large volume of data, bring it down into a point that we can actually gain an understanding of it. So I apologize to repeat myself, so instead of having all these data points, one way we can do is go, okay, we don't want to consider each individual unique value, but what if I just put them into separate intervals? So instead of saying, okay, I'll look at every value, how about I start off with 90 and we'll do it in intervals of 10. So we'll count out how many values are between 90 and 100, how many are between 100 and 110, 110 and 120, and so on and so on. So whilst you lose the integrity of the full data set, because we're not considering all the data points anymore, we've transformed it from the full data set down into interval representations, but by doing so, we've reduced the amount of data that we need to look at. And as such, we can employ visual representations like a histogram, or box and whisker plot, or box plot, whatever it may be, in order to then gain an understanding of how the data, in this case, is distributed. So let's do that. So in this case, what they want us to do is have intervals that are in lots of 20. So we want to take this data set, split it into intervals of 20. So, I believe the minimum value here is 82. Again, my apologies for that. So if we start at like 80 and then in lots of 20, 80 to 100, 100 to 120, and so on. And then from that, we'll generate a histogram. And then from that, then we can talk about some features of the data. So let's do that. So I've downloaded the data set, utility charge here. Now, in order to generate a histogram, there is a variety of ways you can do it in Excel. You could write your own function in VBA if you wanted to, or using native Excel functions. There is a built-in stats package that exists within the Excel extensions that you can use. There's tons of statistical macros that you can download and install into Excel. Or one other way, and this is the way that they're going to focus on in this semester, is to employ a PivotTable. PivotTables, again, are essentially exactly what I was saying before, taking huge data sets and then being able to gain information from it by compressing it. So what we want to do is firstly create a pivot table. Now in this case, we've only just got the one set of data within this sheet. So you can imagine another data sheet, so you would have another data sets here and here and here and here and here and so on and so on. In that case, then what you need to do is you need to select the data set that you want to focus on. Here we've only got one, so we'll auto select. So if we click on insert, we want to do pivot table. Pivot table, and we want to do click down in the pivot table here. So we just want to put it onto a new worksheet here, and it hasn't auto selected. That's unusual. So what we want to do is select this data. If it's already auto selected, then that's perfectly fine. So don't worry if that looks a little bit different on yours. Okay, so we'll click OK. And so here what we've essentially got is, well, this is a raw pivot table. It's got no data in it whatsoever. So what we want to have within here, like I think what happens in this column is you want to put in the breakdown of the data. So the breakdown of the data in our case is we want to take this utility charge field and we want to group it into lots of 20. So what we do is we drag that. You can either drag it across into here, or you can just drag it across into here, which is what I would recommend. So, oh, whoops, got to click on it, sorry, and then we drop that down. This is, just move that across. So what we've got within here is, you'll see that all it's done is just taken the data points from what we had before. This, however, is not how we want it to be represented. We want it to put it into groups of 20. So what we're going to do is you just click any point of the data, right click, click on group, and you'll see here we've got starting out and ending out. So this is the minimum value, this is the maximum value. Now I want to do it in lots of 20s. I want the numbers to be clean, so I will have the minimum as 20 and then the maximum as 220, and in this case we're doing it in lots of 20. So we just click OK, and you'll see now it's compressed that large data set that we had before just down into intervals. Now this isn't what we want, obviously, off the bat. What we want to know is how many elements are contained within each interval. So in order to do that, we take the utility charge, because we're analyzing that as well, put it down into the values, and you'll see here that it defaults on count of utility charge. Now if we were doing something different, we would have to employ a different function, and I'll show you how to do that. So what this means is, in the 80 to 99 bracket, we have 4 data points. So there's 4 data points that are between 80 and 99, 7 between 100 and 119, and so on and so on. So this gives us an understanding of the distribution of the data. Now, quite often that on its own is perfectly fine. You can leave it as it is. As we want to generate a histogram, histograms are based upon percentages as opposed to raw values. So instead of having 4, we want to have what percentage of 4 is that of the overall total. So in order to do that, again, we just click, and we want to do that for each of the values within here, is we're going to right click, and we go down to summarize data by. See how we've got count here. I'm going to click on more options. You'll see there's quite a few that come up by default. Excuse me. Click the show value as. Here we've got normal, but what we want to do is we want to make it a percentage. So in this case here, we want to make it a percentage of the column. So what that means is it's going to take this value 4 and it's going to make it a percentage relative to the column total, which is 50. So click on that in column, click OK, and you'll see that it's now converted into percentages. So that's great. So what we've done is we created the raw data that's required in order to generate the histogram. We now need to do that. So as we're dealing with a pivot table, we're actually in Excel, we're creating a pivot chart, but this pivot chart is going to be a histogram, or it's going to be very close to a histogram. So in order to do that as well, we just right click on the tab. Oh, whoops, we need to do that. So we just highlight the data, pivot table tools, and we want to create a pivot chart. In this case, we're just doing a basic column. So click OK, and I'll just kill that. And what we have here is our histogram. So it's just taken these values and it's plotted them. So one thing about a histogram, and this is, remember, this is a pivot chart. This isn't actually quite a histogram. One of the features of a histogram is that there's no gaps between each of the intervals. So in order to do that, we just right click, format data series, and see where it says gap width. We're just going to reduce that down to 0, click close, and there we have it. So that's our histogram to represent the data. And in this case, what we see is we see an increasing, the pattern that we see is that it increases up to a point and it starts to decrease. And this is something that actually looks very close to what we would call a normal distribution, or a Z distribution, or a bell curve. So we're going to go into that in more, or should I say the subject's going to go into that into more details in upcoming lectures, and I will cover this in more detail in other tutorial solutions, video tutorial solutions that I do. Okay, so look, I hope that that was informative. If you have any questions whatsoever, please either comment on this video or send me a personal message on this video, and if you could subscribe, and then that way you'll obviously receive a notification anytime any new tutorial videos become available. Okay, well, thanks for that, and I hope that was useful. Okay, bye.